Happy to see all of you in Delhi. Thank you all for taking time out to join us this evening for the Hello and Glenfiddich Fathers of Innovation, to celebrate each one of you sitting across who are achievers and innovators in their own way. This is a property which is very exclusive to Glenfiddich. Thank you, Glenfiddich, for partnering with us.
So, hello everyone, and welcome to the Fathers of Innovation hosted by Glenfiddich. My name is Angad Singh Gandhi, and I see a lot of familiar faces there on the chat. Thank you all of you for joining. Glenfiddich has been celebrating Fathers of Innovation now for over 10 years across the world and over 3 years across in India. Glenfiddich comes from the Valley of the Deer, as rightly mentioned by Ruchika. It was started by a guy called William Grant. William Grant, his wife Elizabeth Grant, and their 9 kids, 7 sons and 2 daughters, brought this distillery together back in 1887. The same guy went to make another brilliant malt known as the Balvenie, the uniqueness of a gin known as Hendrick's, another whiskey called Grant's Whiskey, and another beautiful blended malt called Monkey Shoulder. William in 1887 told his 9 kids to quit what they were doing and come and join him to make whiskey. And in 2022, today, Glenfiddich is the world's highest selling single malt whiskey. Now, that didn't happen overnight. It was in 1820 to 1833 when America, announced prohibition for 14 years. And at that time, America was 80% of the whiskey sale in the world. So it was William Grant who was aging whiskey. People in Scotland thought he's gone mad. 1933, 5th of December, prohibition got over. America shouted to Scotland to send us all the whiskey that they have. And for the next 10 years, William sold all his whiskey at his prices to America and made a fortune. And this fortune actually helped his great-grandson, a guy called Sandy Gordon, in 1960 to sit on a plane to go to New York and started the category of single malt whiskey. The very first single malt whiskey ever to be taken outside of Scotland is right now in front of you on your tables, is this very green bottle. And that's why we are so proud of this green bottle. Whether the bar is small or big, 5-star or a local side of a bar, you'll always find this green bottle. The very first single malt that 90% of us ever had is this very green bottle. In 1960s, it was known as pure malt. In the 70s, the term from pure malt became straight malt. And today, finally, we call it as single malt. Single malt because it is made up in a single distillery with using only malted barley.
Thank you, Angad. That was lovely. Just going to start the evening on innovators, on everybody to raise a toast. First, let's all raise a toast to each other. I hope you've all poured a drink. There we are, to each one of us and its successes and many, many more innovators to come. I hope you have that lovely curated meal in front of you. We've kind of specially put it together, keeping the flavors of today's whiskey in mind. So Angad, can you brief us on that?
So to start with, the first course with the appetizers, how we get the things appetizing is we make ourselves a highball generally. Now, I know a lot of you are purists and you don't put water and ice and soda in your single malts, but give it a go today. There's no harm in trying it with some nice cubes of ice. And that's my first serve, the Glenfiddich highball. So
I have a question for you, Angad. Is it best savored and drunk with just water?
Firstly, any alcohol, whether it be Glenfiddich or any particular alcohol, it's best had with your friends. Now you put water in it, ice in it, or soda in it is your particular choice. But for understanding a liquid and opening a distilled spirit, water is what helps the best. If you add a lot of ice, the surface area decreases on your palate, and the complete characteristics of your whiskey you will never find out.
Kalyani, now that your setup is the prettiest, let me give you that honor and start off with you. Tell us what keeps you ticking and how do you meet your challenges so, let me say so fabulously.
It's been an amazing journey, and everything that I have done so far, I have put my heart and soul in it. I have jumped from being a hotelier to being a journalist and, reporting and writing for 4 very diverse magazines. It's been a wonderful, wonderful 50 odd years. And I have absolutely no regrets, But I think only because I feel that the good you take much for granted. And I think it's the unfortunate things that happen in your life, the mistakes you made and you pay for it, because we always have choices. And those are the biggest learnings. And my failures, which have been plenty, and I'm sure I'm going to make many more mistakes, they have been my greatest learnings and greatest teachings.
I have Suneet and Ravi, two very creative designers. Tell us what were the challenges that Indian designers faced? How do you manage to be, I think, ahead of the curve or on the curve, or kind of manage to continue to be part of the competition?
I actually don't sit on my past laurels, and I don't really think about having done 3 decades. I always think I'm getting started. I enjoy working, and I think the rest of it just falls into place, whether it's the creation of, new opportunities for yourself and keeping ahead of yourself and the curve. If there's one thing I'd like to say for myself, it's that I'm very, very, I love my work very much. So.
And Ravi, you and Suneet, of course, inseparable. You mastered, you kind of conquered the men's wear world at that point of time when everybody was running after lehengas, and you maintained your own distinct style. Tell me, is it still as relevant as it was at that point of time?
Things have changed a lot, in 30 plus years. For me, fashion should be an extension of your personality. So and therefore I don't try and make any statements. I just do what I do. I do what I enjoy doing. I'm more or less a sort of neoclassist.
But I think there's a lot we have to learn from Suneet and Ravi both. But, Angad, I'm going to come back to you on a question before I move on to the others. How else can you make your whiskey exciting? Everybody's just having it the normal way. It's either on the rocks or a little bit of soda or whatever it is. But so, Angad, can you brief us on that?
We love drinking our whiskey straight up with water, with ice. But as the world is evolving, so is the Indian consumer. We have several new ways of enjoying our favorite spirits, whether it be cocktails or serves. But one of the ways that I love drinking my single malt is in a form of an old fashioned, and that's why all of you have this cocktail mix being sent to you in the box, which is a variation to the classic old fashioned. You can drop this in a glass with a few cubes of ice and some whiskey, and you can stir that down, and it will be a perfect old fashioned. This one we call it as the Glenfiddich fashioned.
Super. With lots of fashion designers on there, the Glenfiddich fashion. Thank you, Angad. Sanju, you are known for one of the best collections of whiskeys, single malts, all of that. Angad, you are with me on that.
And first of all, Ruchika, Angad, thanks. I'm seeing all my friends after a long, long time. So throughout my life, I've been to Scotland probably 50, 60 times. I love that area. I would go to the distilleries. I've stayed in a lot of distilleries and region to region, and where the water is all treated. So you understand the value of the water is so important getting into the end product. May give the character to the thing.
No, absolutely rightly mentioned, sir. It's the terroir, the weather conditions, the water, which makes massive difference. I would just add on a single point, something that is known as the angel share, which is the whiskey evaporating in the cask on an every year basis. Depends on the weather. Now in Scotland, the weather conditions are cold and marshy, which gives us an angel share of just under 2% per annum, which makes sure that if we put 100 liters in a cask in beginning of the year, at the end of the year, we have minimum 98 liters. And that's what helps us to age whiskey for 40, 50, 60 years. I had this discussion with you, I remember very clearly, when we spoke about the ages of whiskey and whether 21 year is better or 15 is better or 18 or 40 or 30. I think it's totally your palate, what it wants, what is the desire of that, what suits it. It can totally happen. So it's totally your particular palate, what it wants.
I also have hoteliers Jay and Anirudh, and of course restaurateur. I have Randeep. So I just want their take on the trend on single malts. Tell us about are women also taking to single malt?
Single malts are again on the uptake.
Right.
Are ladies also partaking? Most definitely, yes. Glenfiddich, look, it needs no introduction. We all know that. We all kind of grew up and we still have a bottle in our bars. There are certain things which are so classy that they will never be out of fashion because they're far above and beyond fashion. And I think Glenfiddich's one of them.
Super. That's to Glenfiddich and many
Cheers
more.
cheers to you. And actually, I'll tell you a story of mine and Jack. Jack was a great friend of mine, and I met Jack first time in hell. After 15 minutes back, I heard Jack that why did you land up in hell, my friend? So he said, and that in his last life, he used to live in Kentucky, feeling really tired. So he picked up a bottle of single malt whiskey. He poured it in a nice glass. He added a few cubes of ice to his glass, and then Jack added Coca-Cola to it.
Oh, Christ.
And he landed in
This is
hell.
sacrilege.
You kill the hard work of Scottish people working for 12 and a half or maybe 13 or 14 or 15 or 20, 40 years to make this whiskey by adding Coca-Cola to it. That's just one and only no from my side. Rest, have it with friends, have however you want it, enjoy it. Nothing serious, guys. I'm not someone who's very particular that way, and that's about it.
I'm coming back to Anirudh, who travels a lot and also with that little bit of a lineage which comes. Tell me about the history of single malt and the Kings. Was it as relevant at that time, or did they like local liquor? What was it like? And tell us about your experiences while you're the new generation with such global exposure.
A whiskey was something that was enjoyed but was kept reserved for an occasion. And then of course, as the Maharajas went abroad and they learned more and more about the fancy lifestyle and everything, then whiskey became a more or less a normal thing in almost every old household in India. And as for this whiskey that we are having this evening, it's wonderful. And as Mr. Rathore just said a few minutes ago, that it's one of those that would never go out of fashion. It is the trendsetter and will always remain so. So this one's absolutely fantastic. I actually had a question, if I may ask, to Angad, with Indian cuisine, which is so vast and different and contrasting. Whiskeys like this and single malts are paired best with what kind of Indian food? That would be quite knowledgeable to know.
The favorite cuisine up there in Scotland is actually Indian food, and no marks for that. Right? Chicken tikka masala is a no-brainer at the distillery. If you go there anytime and you ask for a pairing with Glenfiddich, the first thing that they will offer you. School of thought that most of us go ahead with is the flavors have to be super complementing, which I personally have seen going other ways as well. Whereas the Indian cuisine is concerned, there are a lot of amazing cuisines that we have in the country, and we try to take the contradicting route that way, trying to play with the flavors.
Right. And one last question I wanted to ask. I wanted to understand that India is known, for various herbs and, infusing these herbs and sort of things in this whiskey. Is that something that you recommend, or is it imagination going far too beyond and we need to stop there?
I think whiskey in itself has a lot of character that it draws from the wood, the particular oak or the cask that you age it in, and infusing it with herbs and spices would take that character away. Smaller things like water, ice, glassware can make a huge difference.
100%. It's the way you drink, how you are served is what makes all the difference.
I love the enthusiasm, the questions, the point of views. This is exactly what I drive for.
And on that note, thank you for always being around as friends and family. We love you all. Thank you. Good night. See you. Enjoy the evening.
See you guys.
Yes, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
All of us. Cheers. Bye. Thanks.